are just a couple more people who were not here at the beginning, whom I need to introduce to you. Deborah Sternick is our origination director for the California Democratic Party. She helps us with party endorsement process and with lots of other things. Thank you, Deborah. I'd also like to introduce Lara Horgan, who is our South Vice Chair of the Democratic Party of Orange County, and she's the organizer for this year's DPOC's annual fundraiser, which you will hear more about soon. Ana Briceño, the chair of the party, had other duties today and couldn't be with us and sends her regrets. And I also have to mention Ash Albondi, who is Senator Lynn's campaign manager. We've known him for many years. Thank you. Okay, I hope you all enjoyed your lunch. Good. Assemblywoman Petrie Norris and Senator Lynn will each have 15 minutes to speak and 10 minutes for questions. I would now like to introduce Assemblywoman Connie Petrie Norris, who has been a special friend of the club's since she first ran for California Assembly District 74 in 2018. She has spoken to the club many times and even went door-to-door canvassing in the village with our volunteers. It has been wonderful to watch her develop from political newcomer to the accomplished legislator she is now. We are so pleased that she agreed to be with us here again today. Please welcome Assemblywoman Connie Petrie Norris.
Good afternoon. Hello, Laguna Woods Democrats. Yeah. It is an absolute pleasure to be able to join you today. So nice and strict with someone to actually see you all in 3 dimensions instead of just on the Zoom screen. It really is, I think, after the year and a half that we have all been through, it is really special to be able to come together again in community and in friendship. And as I look out across the crowd, I recognize so many familiar faces. You know, there's also a number of new folks here as well. It's always wonderful to see the club continuing to grow. And so for those of you who may not know me, I am Assemblywoman Connie Petrie Norris. As you said, I was elected in 2018 to represent California's 74th Assembly District. And in addition to the wonderful community of Laguna Woods, I also am very honored to represent the cities of Laguna Beach, Newport Beach, Huntington Beach, Irvine, and Costa Mesa. So I was elected in 2018, and we are approaching the 3-year anniversary of my time as your representative. And in the Assembly, I am continuing my work to protect the California coast, to fully fund California public schools, to expand healthcare access and improve affordability, and to create good jobs and ensure that we are building a California economy where we can all succeed. I want to take a few moments today to update you on kind of state of the state and some of the things that I've been working on and some of the things I'm really excited about. But before I jump into that, I do want to take a moment to celebrate. Just 11 days ago, we resoundingly defeated an attempt. To recall our governor. And this was only the 4th gubernatorial recall election in American history. And it's only the 2nd time that a gubernatorial election has been defeated. So this is that's what's worth, and that's what hard-working clubs all across the state who played such a pivotal role in this defeat. The votes are still being tallied, and we're now at 95% of the votes have been counted, and 62.5% of Californians voted no on the recall. And as you may have heard the governor say, we voted no. The loud, strong voice, we voted no. We said no, but we also said yes to so many things. We said yes to protecting Roe v. Wade and women's rights. We said yes to tackling the climate crisis head on. We also said yes to a COVID-19 response that is led by the data, that follows the science, and that trusts experts. We said yes. It's interesting to me to see the way that California's COVID-19 strategy really did become a centerpiece of the campaign on both sides. And the reason that 62.5% of Californians said yes to our COVID-19 strategy is because it is working. This has been a phenomenally challenging period for our state, for our country, for the entire world. But California, right now, our vaccination rate is amongst the highest in the nation. And we're celebrating as well. And our infection rate right now is one of the lowest in the nation. And our state has been spared, largely spared the ravages of the Delta variant that we have seen tearing across so many other states and so many other communities. So we are going to continue to follow a strategy that follows the science, believes in facts, and is driven by data. And as we look to put really the nightmare of this pandemic behind us and begin to rebuild California's economy, we do have an opportunity, as President Biden has said, not just to build back, but to build back better. And all throughout this pandemic, the pandemic, it both laid bare and exacerbated some really fundamental inequities all across our state and our nation, from healthcare to education, job security, and the digital divide. So as we work to build back California, as we forge our California comeback, we have an opportunity to forge a swift, robust, and just recovery. And as we're doing this work, we've been blessed with really unprecedented resources for the state. As I'm sure folks have heard and have seen, California right now, we have a historic and unprecedented budget surplus. We have a $74 billion budget surplus. This historic surplus really does give us the resources to tackle some of our most intractable challenges. And I want to just highlight some of the investments that we're making and some of the things that I am most excited about in this year's budget. As I said, I'm going to use the word historic quite a few times. We really are. We're making historic investments in so many critical areas, starting with education, from cradle to career. We are investing to expand access to early childhood education. We're also investing to increase our CSU and UC slots to open more windows of opportunity for more California kids. And I'm really pleased to share that as part of our education budget, I secured funding for Orange Coast College for a new chemistry building. We all know STEM education is so critical right now, so really excited to see that project start to come to fruition. We're also making a historic investment to tackle the state's homelessness crisis. And I think I don't have to tell you that all throughout the pandemic, our already daunting and statewide homelessness crisis has deepened. We know that mental health is such an important part of that. We know that our system for mental health care across the state is fundamentally broken, and that's one of the things that I've prioritized since being elected. And as part of this year's budget and part of the investments that we're making, I worked to secure funding for Orange County's Be Well, which will fund a second Be Well campus in Irvine. The Be Well vision is to build out a network of health and wellness clubs to serve all the residents of Orange County. So that project is getting underway shortly and is going to be located, as I said, in Irvine, near the Great Park. I'm also excited about the historic investments that we are making to close the digital divide and build out our broadband infrastructure. I co-authored legislation this year to bridge the digital divide and ensure that all Californians have access to internet. We're also making historic investments in small business to help our small businesses who have been so devastated throughout the pandemic recover. And I was a joint author on a piece of legislation that we introduced at the end of last year. And that legislation then was rolled into the budget, and we are delivering $4.4 billion across the state for our hard-hit small businesses. And I know that's been a priority for Senator Lynn as well, and he really has pushed for that. And it has been tremendous to see that money in the hands of our small business owners. And I've had so many of our folks just say that that was a lifeline. That was a lifeline for them to enable them to survive throughout the pandemic. We're also making historic and really critical investments in building climate resilience and ensuring that our state is better prepared for realities of wildfires, of drought, and of rising seas. And a couple things that I'm excited about as part of the budget. I've continued to introduce legislation to address the threat of sea level rise. In this budget, we have allocated $500 million for coastal adaptation and restoration initiatives, and looking forward to partnering with our senator to ensure that we bring those resources here to Orange County and here to our coastal communities. Also secured funding for a regional fire and rescue training center that is going to be established and headquartered just around the corner in the district in Costa Mesa. As many of you are aware, in my first term, I worked with the Orange County Fire Authority on a really innovative and groundbreaking initiative to upgrade our technology and equipment for fighting wildfires. And I'm excited that as part of this year's budget, that program is going to be rolled out statewide as well. Yes, so there are a number of things, as I said, to be really excited about with this budget. And certainly the resources that we have present us with a really incredible opportunity. But we also need to ensure that as we're making these historic investments, that these $1 billion come with appropriate accountability measures built in. And please that I have been continuing as my role as chair of the Assembly's Accountability and Administrative Review Committee. And in that capacity, one of the things that I'm working on right now is to ensure that as we're standing up these new programs and rolling them out across the state, that we have appropriate metrics, benchmarks, and reporting built in so that these historic investments yield historic results as well. And when I think about accountability, and when I think about oversight, for me it is more important, and it's bigger than just ensuring that we're counting the dollars and cents and that we're spending your tax dollars efficiently and effectively. That's incredibly important. But I think accountability is even bigger than that, because I feel like we are living in a moment where people's faith in our institutions are at something of an all-time low. And I think every time we see a headline about waste, or read a story about fraud, or we hear something about government abuse, that erodes people's trust in our institutions. And so for me, when I think about the work that we're doing on accountability and oversight, it's about rebuilding that trust as well. And that's why I'm proud to be continuing this work, and I know it's been a real area of focus as well with Congresswoman Porter, who is doing an incredible job on oversight and accountability. And as some of you may know, Congresswoman Porter even has gotten a license plate on her minivan is oversight. Phenomenal. So very briefly on the topic of continuing this work, before we open it up for questions, I want to provide just a very quick campaign update. So when I was elected in 2018, I was part of a historic blue wave that swept Orange County, from City Council to Congress, from school board to state assembly. We made incredible progress. And that is worth we worked so hard to make that happen. And in 2020, we suffered some tough losses. We also had some really narrow victories. My race, for example, was the closest legislative race in the entire state.
Not good.
Yeah, I think yes. Less than 1% margin of victory. So we also, though, in 2020, we did build on the progress we made in 2018, because for the first time ever, right now in Orange County, we have more elected Democrats serving in our local offices than we do elected Republicans for the first time ever. We now have a Democratic woman serving as an Orange County supervisor. Supervisor Foley is the first Democratic woman ever to be a member of that board. We also, in 2020, elected our incredible state senator, Lynn. We've got a lot to be proud of when we look back on 2020. And as we look ahead to 2022, we know that is going to be a tough year. It is not a presidential election. Historically, voter turnout in non-presidential years can be really low and can really hurt folks like me on the ballot. So we know that it's going to be a tough race. We know that it's going to be a tough fight, and we know that the other side's going to throw everything they have at me, and we know we're going to have to work really hard to ensure that we re-elect Congresswoman Porter, that we also send Harley Ruda back to Congress, and that we re-elect me to continue. It really is an honor and a privilege, and I am so grateful to all of you for all you do, for all your hard work, and for being on my team and for being by my side in this fight. So thank you all so much. And with that, I think we're opening it up for a few questions. All right, you just raise your hand. Start.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. This is not just a question, this is a plea. I was a counselor for 40 years. I worked for kids at risk. Elementary, basically middle school, because high school doesn't do much counseling. All right, it is essential that all that money that the state has goes into supporting counseling programs in every single school. This saves children. I can give you many stories of how it has saved children. I implore you, I can almost cry, to think about this, because it will save the kid who by 3rd grade gets so angry that he wants to strike out, and some of them will become the bombers or the shooters. All right? We want to stop that. And it doesn't take much. I have seen it and I have done it. Okay? And I'll be happy. I'm a speaker. I'll give it to you. I know. I will be happy to talk to you individually if it will help. Okay, thank you for listening, both of you.
And thank you so much for your work, for your advocacy, and for that really important point. And in the state budget this year, we have recognized exactly that we are making investments to ensure that we do have appropriate supportive services in all of our schools. So yes.
My question has to do with oversight of Medicare and their providers. I'm just going to say that the Medicare agent, they get a patient home. And a Medicare agent, go ahead. I'm still, in a Medicare agent, you have a medical group, and when they talk about their mental health care, it doesn't reflect in the insurance, because in an agent home, you have a mental health about that's completely separate. And the question has to do with who is in charge of accountability and oversight when A, they do not, in their network, they do not have enough practitioners to go around, and B, the ones that they have are not qualified, but most of them do not have the qualifications to treat any specific diagnoses. And so, and if you are a member of this insurance, and they don't even provide a provider,
And so I'll repeat the question for folks who couldn't hear. So the question was about who is responsible for oversight to ensure that there is adequate mental health care being provided, particularly for Medicare HMOs. And I'd say, so a couple of things on that. Number one, there's certainly a role both on the federal side and also on the state side. And that certainly is an area I'd love to partner with Congressman Porter to dig into more. And I think that the second point is that there really is a shortage. There really a workforce challenge when it comes to mental health professionals. And so that is another area where we need to focus, and an area on workforce development where I have been focused. So we've got a healthcare shortage, particularly for mental health care providers, but also for healthcare providers, period. And we've got to get in front of that to ensure that we're not dealing with a catastrophic situation in the next 5 to 10 years.
Our children are being traumatized. Our Asian children, our Muslim, Jewish, Black, and Latino are being just traumatized by the disease called prejudice. What are you doing? Are you helping interfaith counsel? What are you doing on the state level?
Well, thank you for that point, and thank you for that question. One of the things that we saw throughout the pandemic was the really horrifying and terrible increase, particularly in hate crimes targeting our API neighbors. And we saw that happening here in Orange County and all across our state. And we've done a couple of things. There's a couple of things that I've been involved in. Number one, we have introduced legislation that will make the penalties, will increase the penalties for hate crimes, which I think is an important step. We've also allocated funding to community organizations and forums that work on these issues. And our Attorney General, who was recently appointed, Attorney General Bonta, has established a task force on hate crimes in California. I think that we have, as you said, we've seen a tremendous escalation, particularly in the pandemic, but in post the Trump's election, there's been a huge increase in racially motivated hate crimes, and it is profoundly concerning and something that we are all really focused on doing everything we can to address.
Excuse me, but with all the money that's in the budget that you say is available, what is being addressed to the homeless crisis? That is a big thing in California, and nobody seems to care, except maybe few people like us, and we don't have the voice to do anything about it. Please tell me what you see in the future.
Yes, and thank you for that question. Homelessness is the number, after COVID, it is the number one concern of Californians. It is our number one challenge. And we have allocated $12 billion in the budget, and the governor and the legislature have a vision for ending street homelessness in 5 years. And the reality is that's not very easy to do, and it is. We need to ensure that we have strong partnerships at every level of government, because a lot of the work actually gets done at the county level. So the state, we set up programs, we set up high-level policy, and we give a lot of the money and the resources to the county. And sometimes when our county partners aren't delivering on programs or aren't utilizing those funds, we're not seeing the results on the ground. But I will say that there has been some good news and some good progress made in Orange County. Not enough, there's still a lot of work to do, but across the county we are building out a system of care that includes emergency shelters and navigation centers, includes permanent supportive housing and wraparound services to ensure that as we get people housed, they have the supports and resources they need to stay housed. And then personally, an area that I've been really passionate about has been ensuring that we are ending veteran homelessness. So early in my first term, I secured funding for a program with the Orange County United Way called Welcome Home OC. And that program is running, it is working, it's getting our veterans homes. And so I think, thank you. And I think it's a really unique model that brings together, private landlords and utilizes federal funding, federal housing vouchers, and houses veterans with private landlords. And I think it's a model that we can build on, and a model that other communities are looking at across the state based on the success of what we're doing here in Orange County. My time is up. Thank you so much. It was wonderful to be here, and we'll do an air. We're doing an air hug. We're gonna do it.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate the time that you've given us here today. And now I would like to introduce Senator Dave Lynn. There will always be a special place for Senator Dave Lynn in Laguna Woods. Former club president Linda Nearing and I first met him as he was deciding to run for office in 2017. When he later ran for California's 37th Senate District, the club was once again proud to support him. He has remained a friend, and we are thankful that he always has time for Laguna Woods. And now Dave will tell you some of what he has accomplished since he's been elected. Welcome.
everybody. It really is great to see you all in person, and it's been a long time coming. I want to first give a shout out again to Connie Petriners. Let's give her another Grace under pressure right there. I know you all asked your toughest questions of her, so I'm looking forward to your much easier questions. I also want to thank the City Council, Mayor Horn, who also came out to our COVID-19 Remembrance Ceremony a few months back, where we honored first responders, nurses, and those who passed. And Mayor Horn was a key part of that ceremony, which we held in Bill Barber Park in Irvine a couple months back, as well as the council members of Laguna Woods. This is a fantastic city that you have the pleasure of overseeing. And I just want to give it up to the Laguna Woods Dems. You have turned Laguna Woods into a bright blue beacon here in Orange County. You won in 2018. You got Katie Porter elected. You got Connie Petrie-Norris elected. In 2020, you did it again with even bigger margins. And you're turning this bluer and bluer every year. And I think Republicans here are a little scared of Laguna Woods now. Talk a little bit about my experiences being a first-time legislator in a state senate. Talk about some of the issues that we're facing, and why, at the end, I'd like to just close, why I think it's important that we continue electing Democrats out of Orange County. So, as you may have read, my very first week of session in January was a little bit unusual. I arrived on, I think, Sunday night. I had a budget committee hearing on Monday morning. And then I found out on Wednesday that I tested positive for COVID. Oh. Now, I've been very, very careful about exposing myself. It must have been on the plane, but I was very shocked. I assumed it was a false positive. I had no symptoms for about a week. And then almost exactly 1 week after I tested positive, I ended up with some pretty bad symptoms. I didn't have any respiratory symptoms, but I had all the gastrointestinal ones, and I don't need to go into detail there, but I did end up going to the hospital, and my what was supposed to be a 4-day stay to start my legislative career off turned into like a 3.5-week stay in Sacramento. But thankfully, that was passed, and I'll just say that this has been a very unusual first year to be in the legislature. First of all, almost everything we did outside of the legislative sessions was virtual. So there's a lot of Zooming, and I know we're all familiar with that, and we're all tired of Zoom. But I also had the pleasure of serving on the Budget Committee, and in particular the Budget Subcommittee for Education. And if you harken back to last January, going into the spring, one of the major topics that we had to deal with was what we did with our schools. Should they reopen? Under what circumstances? What did the state need to do to make sure that we had safe protocols, whether that was social distancing, PPE, and the like? And so we spent probably about, I think, 12 to 15 hearings on these issues, which meant I was in Sacramento doing a lot of work earlier than most people. Usually, as Scotty will tell you, January, February, and March is a period of time where you're supposed to get to know your colleagues, go out to meals with them. It's a sort of a more lackadaisical period in the legislature, but we were hard at work on day one. So I think that really set the tone for the year. We didn't really have a break, and so this was kind of an interesting first year to start off. And I will say that one of the things that was amazing for me personally as a new legislator was having the support of so many local electeds. That we were able to communicate with the superintendents of the different school districts, with our city council members, to try to get a sense of what it is that our schools needed, what our communities needed, and to really push for those in the budget. And we were actually able to get a lot of that accomplished. So you may have seen that we were not in the news a lot for the school reopening stuff. There was not a lot of controversy around that after that was rolled out. And that's in large part because we were able to get a lot of what Orange County school districts wanted and needed. Whether it's do no harm provisions for those who have already reopened in part, whether it was some of the social distancing requirements and making them particularly tailored to Orange County, we were able to get a lot done on behalf of this area. Now, I will just say, aside from the Budget Committee, I thought it might be interesting to know what committees I've been on. So I sit on the Transportation Committee, the Energy Committee, the Banking Committee, and what's called the Business and Professions Committee, which deals with things like how do we train enough nurses and mental health professionals for our workforce. And these kind of reflect what I see as the issues that I want to advance in the California State Senate I think it's important that in Orange County, representing Orange County, and also for the future sustained prosperity of the Democratic Party in California generally, we have to be smart about promoting economic growth, about empowering our small businesses, and not simply just regulate. There is an important place for regulations. There's an important place for workplace safety, for environmental protection, for women's rights in the workplace. All of these are critical issues. At the same time, I think we have to take to heart that folks that want to go out and stake their own claim, that want to start their own businesses, we should be doing all we can to try to empower them. And so as Patty mentioned, small business has been a focus of mine since I took office. Energy for me is a no-brainer because climate change is by far the most important issue that we're facing over the long run. And I know one of the things I really admire about this group of people is that you care so much about the future that we leave behind for our future generations. That you care about what we're doing. And so you may remember during the campaign, you probably got sick of this quote, but I quote the Greeks all the time and say, a civilization is great when its elders plant trees whose shade they know they will never sit in. But that ethos of long-termism, I think, has to drive so much of our policy, and climate change is the top place where we have to put action where our words are. And energy policy for me is the place where we have to do this. Now you may have read that we've created mandates through gubernatorial executive actions to try to get to zero emissions in our economy by the year 2045. And I think those are important priorities, those are important mandates for us to reach, but the reality is we're not going to reach those mandates without significant innovation. That we cannot drive our economic growth to zero. Sure, we could have zero carbon emissions if we simply stopped all economic activity, but nobody will stand for that. So how do we get around that? We need innovation, and I believe the state of California has a big role to play in trying to foster research and development, in trying to work with the private sector and create public-private partnerships to allow the private sector to innovate, to try to get the battery technologies, the efficiency and renewables, the carbon capture, and all the other things we're going to need to turn this around. Because if we don't change course right now, we are leaving behind something that looks very hellacious for future generations. And I just stop, and I don't want to pontificate on climate change too much, but one thing I note is that as bad as this year has been, as far as the record temperatures, as far as the hurricanes, the tornadoes, the wildfires, the floods, this is almost certainly going to be the coolest year over the next 100 years. It's going to be one of the most uniquely benign years as far as weather phenomena. And so we have a moral imperative to try to change course for our future, for the future generations that don't have a voice in our political process today. So I think that's an important priority for me. Education is also very important, and as a former UC professor, working closely with the University of California, the CSUs, and the community colleges to try to reshape our education, to give more access to higher education to people, but also to create and foster innovation in education is so critical, and something we're trying to prioritize in this budget and also in future budgets. Now, Assemblywoman Petrie Norris and I had the pleasure yesterday of attending OCC's opening of its new Maritime Training Center. And this, if you didn't know, it's going to train a future generation of mariners, not the baseball players, but actual sea pilots, ferry operators, cargo ship operators. There are a ton of jobs out there. Yeah. And this is a world-class, state-of-the-art facility, and it's exactly what we should be doing with education. It shouldn't just be about following old playbooks. We need our community colleges, our CSUs and UCs to step up and innovate so that we're training a workforce for the 21st century. Thank you. I don't want to take too long to talk about this, but I'll just say it's been an interesting experience being a first-time legislator, and I've likened my role this year to being a baby. I'm here to learn and grow and hopefully get bigger and stronger so that I can make more impact in future years. But we've been able to get a lot done. Oh, and then once in a while I have a tantrum, I should say, and I'm trying to get what I want. And we've actually been quite successful in that regard. And so I want to point out that in past years, Orange County was known for bringing so little money back from the state that on average we get 6 cents back on the dollar for every dollar that we paid in taxes to the state. Now that number is bound to go, and just to give you some point of reference, I think Santa Clara gets something like 45 cents per dollar, LA gets like 35 cents. We are, I believe, the lowest for any similarly situated suburban or urban county. And so Assemblywoman Petrie Norris, myself, Senator Newman, Senator Umberg, Assemblyman Daley, Assemblywoman Crow Silva, we're trying to change this, and we were able to get a lot back for Orange County. I was able to get back $15 million to extend the Jeffrey Open Space Trail in Irvine, so that it now connects all the way from the Cleveland National Forest to the coast. If you're a biker or if you like long runs, you now have a way to explore, and this is going to be an amazing way to really foster a renewed appreciation for the great outdoors. Norris was able to get back, I forget how much money, but a lot of money, I think $5 million for the Banning Ranch, which is going to be a purchase of land to create a new outdoor reserve. They will revitalize it, turn it into wetlands, and that will create another important outdoor natural space near the coastline. And again, that's something that our kids are going to be able to enjoy, will be able to enjoy very soon as an outdoor space. So we are bringing money back. I was able to bring back $5 million for something called the Sustainability Decathlon, which will allow for, which will bring in teams across the country, across the world, to compete in designing and building a zero-emissions, fully electric home. And we're hoping that that will foster tourism for Orange County, but also importantly to create archetypes that we can use in building here in the state so that we can get there faster to our goals of getting to zero emissions across the state. Finally, I wanted to say we were able to get $15 million for something called the Alert Wildfire Program, which is a wildfire prevention program. Right now we have these cameras around the state that if we think there's a fire, firefighters can pull that up and see if there's smoke and whatnot, and it gives them a real-time window into what's happening. How many people should they deploy, how bad is the fire look, etc. Well, we're going to add infrared to that and fuel mapping, which means that they'll be able to see at nighttime in the smoke. They'll also be able to plan out their fuel reduction efforts. And based on modeling and some of the big data stuff that's out there that's too complicated for my small mind to understand, they're going to be able to predict where those fires will go and deploy resources accordingly. So we are working across the board, but we're also bringing money back to Orange County in our priorities. Now, I'll just mention a couple bills that we've done. I think Assemblywoman Petrie Norris did a great job of summarizing some of what the state's been up to. I would just say that on my bills this year, we were able to get 9 across the governor's desk, ranging from homeowners association to climate to whatever. 2 that I'm particularly proud of that I wanted to mention really quickly. SB 264, which we believe will be signed into law by the governor any day now, will end gun shows at the Orange County Fairgrounds. The state of California should be profiting from or involved in the sale of firearms that are so deadly in our communities. I believe in the Second Amendment and the Constitution, but there's no good reason why the state of California needs to be complicit in that, needs to be involved with taxpayer-owned property. We were also the first state to recognize reproductive coercion as a form of domestic violence in this state. For those of you who are advocates in domestic violence, they know that all too often reproductive coercion, forcing someone to get pregnant against their will, forcing them to have an abortion, coercing them into outcomes, infringing on their reproductive autonomy is a form of domestic violence. And this will allow those people to seek protective measures we believe will save many, many lives of young women out there. 1 minute mark now, by saying why it's important for us to continue electing Democrats out of Orange County. First of all, there's the money. We're getting resources back to Orange County, but we're also shaping policy in this state in a really, really important way. I believe that California is going to be critical for the future of this country. We're facing so many challenges right now. Whether it's this recall, whether it's the end of Roe v. Wade, which I believe will happen imminently, whether it is our dismal future of climate, so many challenges that we're facing as a country that I think really give a lot of us pause and concern about our future. California is the way. We are going to lead this country out of that. But to do that, we need to be thoughtful. We need smart policymakers out there, and we can't just reflexively have knee-jerk policy. And I think Orange County has elected a breed of leaders, Toddy Petrie-Norris, Josh Newman, Tom Umberg, and others, who are thoughtful leaders, who are shaping policies up in Sacramento in ways you can't always see or appreciate, but shaping them into being thoughtful, smart policies by asking the tough question, how will this work? How will it be implemented? What are the downsides of this? And by doing that, I think I'm already seeing the impact. We've seen some bad bills get turned better this year. We've seen some bad bills get killed, and I won't mention them. But I think we're making a real difference right now. And as we try to steer this country, this state on the right track, I think this is so critical going forward. So it's not just about Orange County, although that is important. It's not just about reflecting Orange County values. But I think that as we go in Orange County, increasingly, so goes the country, and I think we have an important role to play. So thank you so much.
Is it true that your 2020 opponent, John Morlock, has been in touch with the cyber ninjas and is going to demand a forensic fraud of your election?
I have not heard that. Although I should mention, I did start a cybersecurity select committee.
Good. All right. Here's a real question. Dealing with special interests. California, now campaign contributions directly to your campaign committee are highly regulated, limited, not enough to really sway you by a special interest. But independent expenditures are unlimited under Citizens United. How do you deal with those interests that you really support, that you're kind of neutral on, or that you oppose? And in that connection, Americans for Prosperity versus Bonta, last case decided by the Supreme Court on the last day, held that the state does not have a compelling interest narrowly tailored for disclosure of that dark money. Is that affecting you? Are you dealing with it in any way?
So I guess the question, if I can rephrase this, is to what degree do independent expenditures and the role that special interests play impact our races? And particularly now that we can't even require any kind of meaningful disclosure of it. Is that a fair encapsulation? Well, thankfully, first of all, I don't have to run for re-election for 3 years, so we really should ask Assemblywoman Petrie-Norris that. But more seriously, I'd say, of course, it affects us. I've taken the no fossil fuel pledge. I was one of just 13 Democrats in the Senate to vote for a bill, a pretty ambitious climate bill, AB 1395. Which was opposed by the building and trade unions. It was opposed by the fossil fuel industry, the Chamber of Commerce as their top opposed bill. So I know that likely the fossil fuel industry will come after me in 3 years. There's not really anything we can do about that. My belief is that if we can get enough word out there right now about what we're doing, if we can engage with the community, hopefully we can head that off at the pass and obviate some of that spending through just good old-fashioned, shoe leather. And that's one of the reasons I want to give a shout out to my district director, Ashel Bendy, who I think had to leave. He is the hardest working district director in the state senate. He's out there nonstop. And the reason for that is because I know that if I don't do my job and I don't get out there and engage with constituents, I don't try to pass legislation that reflects our values, I will lose in 3 years. And so, I've got a limited window. I don't take this for granted that we're going to win. I am hoping redistricting makes my district a little, more cushion. I know Cotty's hoping that as well. But I can't assume that. So the counter that we have is, that grassroots engagement and showing people, and I think this is important for a Democrat in the state legislature, showing people that government can do good things for them, showing them that good policy can do good things. Cotty mentioned this, but I helped pass SB 87, which created the Small Business COVID-19 Relief Grant Program. That program has brought over, I want to say, $60 million back to my district in Orange County, to 500 small businesses. My staff has helped 1,000 plus unemployed people get their EDD benefits, so we're out there trying to show people government can work.
Excuse me.
Okay.
What can the state do about the crisis in housing in this state? There's not enough housing stock, and it causes inflation in housing and dislocations in many different areas.
I could not agree more. I voted for some controversial housing bills this year. I did get a lot of flack because, housing policy is controversial policy. But that being said, I know that the authors of several of these bills that I voted for did take significant advice and amendments to try to tailor those and allow some measure of local control. But that all being said, we're in a housing crisis and we need more housing. I worry about the fact that my kids, when they graduate from college, likely will not be able to afford a place here in Orange County. That is, Silicon Valley, LA, that's already the case. It's becoming the case in Orange County. UCI graduates, I think we have a couple here, really can't afford it. So we need density, we need housing, we need carrots and sticks. And so I think this is important. I also think we need funding. We need to think creatively. One of the bills I plan to propose next year would create a CEQA exemption. That's the environmental quality impact assessment, environmental impact report that you have to do before you create any new developments. In that process, that we would allow an exemption for that for affordable housing that met certain environmental standards. And so I think we're hoping to try to get bills like that through to create more housing. I will finally say that I think there is a recognition in the legislature, and I know Kadi can speak to this on the assembly side, of the importance of housing and the importance of buildings. It's the number one reason people are leaving the state. It's not taxes, it's not regulation, it is the cost of housing.
Okay, in order to bring your money back up, we've got to have jobs for the people. Instead of sending our manufacturing overseas, how do you plan on bringing, and as we modernize our technology, we have to get manufacturing to do that new technology.
Yeah.
How do you bring it back to this country? That's where the good paying jobs are.
I agree with that completely. To some degree, I think President Biden is trying to do this right now with some of his Build Back Better initiatives. A lot of this is around federal policy. What the state can do is try to create better incentives for manufacturing and innovation. And so one of the things I would like to do, and I mentioned this earlier in talking about energy policy, is to foster more innovation in green spaces, that is to say, environmental innovation here in the state, and to incentivize that through tax credits, incubators, public-private partnerships, direct investment in research, and I'd like to drive a lot of that to Orange County. Now, Kadi and I were working on a tax credit that would have allowed for innovation. I think these types of things are important, and we are seeing some manufacturing emerge in parts of California around things like electric bus manufacturing, around solar panels, around a lot of the things that we're going to need if we want to turn the tide on the environmental crisis that we find ourselves in. So I'm open to all ideas, but I think it's just about being committed to innovation and to trying to encourage and foster businesses locating, including manufacturing businesses locating to the state. But if you have other ideas, I'd love to hear them.
Water.
That's all she needs to say.
I have three things: Jefferson County, farmers, and water.
Yeah. So my belief, we're facing coming water wars, and that's just the impact that climate's having. My understanding is that we depleted a lot of our existing groundwater sources. We're going to have to rethink water policy, and it's very complicated policy if you look into it. So there's different overlapping federal and state and local policies. There's property rights involved. I was talking to one local water district here that basically has to use their water. They have water rights, and they have to use them every year, or they lose them. So they literally planted alfalfa by the river there because they want to just have rights to that when they need it. We don't need it at the moment, apparently. So they're planting alfalfa because that's a very water-intensive crop. And it's use it or lose it. If they don't use it, they lose their rights to it going forward. And that's the type of counterproductive water policy we need to change. I firmly believe, and this may be controversial to some, but that drinking water, clean drinking water, is a basic human right, and that ought to supersede all other uses of water.
Yes.
statute to that effect a few years ago. I intend to introduce a constitutional amendment next year seeking to declare that as a part of the California Constitution, that access to clean drinking water is a human right. And I hope to head off some of the water wars. We need food and we need agriculture. In California, obviously, this is a huge industry. But, I think there needs to be some reform in the types of usage. You go out and you see these pistachio and almond plants that are so water intensive. It doesn't make any sense. We're in a desert. Those are in the desert. We need to be reforming the use of water in agriculture and elsewhere, and ensuring that everybody has that right. Because if we take this as granted today, but in 10, 20 years, we may have a serious dispute over that.
Hi. I'm in the senior legislature, and so I'm very interested in senior issues. And we're like the fastest growing demographic in California. I'm very happy about the master plan for aging that's going on in Sacramento, and there's like 5 tranches of different legislation, like social engagement and mental health and transportation. I just wanted to ask if you were involved at all in the master plan for aging, because that involves so many of us. Thank you.
I am not, and it's not because I don't care, but it's because you only have so much time, and I think I've laid out some of the issues I'm working on, and my staff already feels a little bit overstretched right now, so I'm very interested in learning more about some of the particulars. I would like to, learn as we come to votes at how I can be influential, and also to represent Orange County's particular aging interests, because I think that's an important role for me to play. But I'm not part of that, nor do I intend to be. And again, it's not because I don't care, but I'm on 6.5 committees right now, and that's seen as a lot for someone in my position. But thank you so much for that, and please let's continue to stay in touch, because I do care. Thank you so much, everybody. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Senator Min. Could we just have another round of applause? Couldn't ask for 2 better legislators to represent us in Orange County. We really could. Thank you so much. Congresswoman Katie Porter would have been here today, except that Congress is in session, so she's in D.C. She's been such a strong voice in Congress that you see her often on MSNBC and CNN, and you read about her in the LA Times and the OC Register. Joel will now show us the video that Congresswoman Porter made just for the club.
Good afternoon, Laguna Woods Democrats. I'm so glad to be virtually joining you today. It's been a busy year in Congress fighting for Orange County families, and I'm grateful to get a chance to share some of that work with you. Right now, Congress is debating legislation that would create millions of good-paying jobs and support the workers doing those jobs. From ensuring that parents aren't being forced out of the workplace because of skyrocketing childcare costs, to fighting so that seniors on Medicare can get dental, vision, and hearing benefits, Congress is working hard to leave nobody behind in our economic recovery. Just before the pandemic, childcare surpassed housing as the biggest expense for California families. So I decided to make one of my top priorities in Congress fighting for a bold investment in childcare in our federal budget. This is what we need for a strong workforce. Childcare isn't only about children or parents, it's about what we need for a globally competitive workforce and a strong, stable economy. Americans who care about our economy, our small businesses, gender equity, and racial justice should care about childcare. And I'm proud to say that after weeks of discussion, my Democratic colleagues on the Education and Labor Committee last week approved budget language that makes these urgent and universal childcare investments. Congress is also continuing to work on the larger Build Back Better budget, and the plan is that we'll pass it alongside a bipartisan infrastructure bill. which will modernize our roads and bridges and make necessary investments in sustainability, resilience, and fighting wildfires. I can't let my time with you all pass without saying how grateful I am for all of your hard work in opposing the recall. I'm so grateful that Governor Gavin Newsom will continue to lead California forward. Now that the recall election is behind us, it's time to focus on the next big fight, the 2022 election. There's a lot up in the air right now with redistricting, and we are taking nothing for granted. And I know I can count on the Laguna Woods Democrats to do the same, to come out and support candidates up and down the ballot, to donate, to volunteer, and to vote. Laguna Woods Democrats have been with me every step of the way since 2018, and I look forward to continuing this fight with all of you by my side. Thank you everyone for being here and for supporting the Laguna Woods Democrats.
Let's have one final round of applause for our 3 political stars. We are so proud of all they have done and will continue to do for us in the name of democracy, justice, and what's right. And otherwise, we thank you all for coming. I will be right back.
Yeah.